Many people are speculating that there will be big gains for the GOP in the midterms. Others, like, for example, liberal filmmaker Michael Moore, believe the public will show up for Dems in a big way. What's your take on it? Are we looking at a red or a blue wave?
I don't know, personally, because it has gone back and forth. I cannot understand how anyone in their right mind is supporting the fringe candidates for the Republican Party, the election deniers. At this point, I'm watching the different races and looking at the polls and just going, oh, please be right on most of them. On some of them, it's like, no, you cannot possibly still back this idiot.
Now, it's been reported that several candidates, often younger ones, are hesitant to accept help from Joe Biden in their respective races. The New York Times said President Biden is unpopular everywhere. Maybe it's the gaffes, maybe it's policy differences, but whatever it is, something does seem to be tainting the presidential endorsement, something that's usually worth its weight in gold. Do you think the party is evolving beyond Biden's vision, or is it something simpler and more immediate? Either way, it signals greatly diminished support within his own party. Not a good thing for a president. So, in your estimation, what is going on here exactly?
Part of it, I think, is the marketing. Nobody's shouting from the chandeliers that the Democratic Party has done this or done that and supports this and doesn't want things to happen to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the like. Mm-hmm. They're not shouting those things from the rafters. Yeah, he's made quite a few errors in speech, tack it up to old age,
right?
Maybe. But I don't think his policies per se are what the Democrats as a whole are worried about. It's his lack of touch with speech, slurring his words,
right,
mashing words together, and part of that is lack of socialization. Now, he deals with people on a daily basis, but that doesn't mean it's the right kind of socialization that will get you talking and debating. They're distancing themselves from Biden because he's unpopular because, of course, inflation and what is going on right now economically is his fault. Not, but it's what it's coming out as.
Mitch McConnell famously or infamously implied in recent months that the GOP does not have the best candidates this time around. Do you think he really believes that, or was it just a tactic intended to animate Republican voters? What do you think of the GOP field and how it stacks up against the Dem field?
They scare me. Some of the candidates really scare me. They're election deniers. They're QAnon believers. They have flip-flopped on their issues so many times, they're like windshield wipers. I would hope that people would realize this and not vote for them, but I don't know. We're looking at snake oil salesmen in Pennsylvania, and then we've got the hardcore election denier in Arizona, and we've got, that would be the one running for governor, because it's not just the House and Senate, it's election officials in states are being elected, the governors. These people are not the best candidates.
Seems we're at the point now where politicians can use the idea of do you stand with Trump or against Trump as political ammunition against their Republican opponents. It's a way of putting the GOP's feet to the fire, but is it an effective method? In other words, do enough Americans agree that standing with Trump is necessarily a bad thing?
I truly believe that good politicians, no matter what, are going to say a person who's got multiple felony investigations going on is not the person you should be standing with. He is not law and order, and the GOP has always been the party of law and order. But you can't be a party of law and order if the head of your party is a felon or has possibly committed felonies. I think that when people ask, do you stand with this person or do you not, that they truly want to know if you support the off-the-wall ideas of election denial. It goes all back to the whole same thing, the election denial, the insurrection, all of these events and things that have taken place, bullying, calling handicapped persons dummies, and degrading women. Do you really want that person back in the White House or back in Congress, that kind of person in Congress, where if it's women's rights today, it's going to be the voting rights, it's going to be same-sex marriages, it's going to be all of these things that have been constitutionally backed through the Supreme Court, such as it is now, that will be brought back into the forefront and done away with. It's a legitimate question to ask, and if somebody stands with he who will not be named, then they lost my vote.
Now, I want to discuss a specific Senate race, Dr. Oz versus John Fetterman in Pennsylvania. After an admittedly eyebrow-raising debate the other night, many news pundits are now saying the public and the news media were essentially duped in terms of Fetterman's cognitive shortcomings. Others have argued that to anybody who's been paying attention, the writing was on the wall. So do you believe that we've lowered our standards regarding what makes a viable candidate? Defenders of Fetterman, or at least his policies, have signaled that it's ableist to point out what's obvious to so many folks. Is it ableist? And if so, what's more important, not being ableist or having a mentally sharp leader? Give us the no BS, nonpartisan Dr. Tabor take on it.
First off, Mr. Fetterman is a good leader from what I have seen and read of how he's operated in Pennsylvania, where he actually lives. He had a stroke. There are 2 other congressmen in Washington who had strokes last year. They went home for treatment for a month or 2, and they were back in Congress, and one of them is speaking clear as day. It all depends on where the stroke happens in the brain. Fetterman's stroke was in his speech center on the left side of the brain. He's young enough to where the brain will rewire around the affected areas, and it's already started doing it. Right now, what he has is auditory processing issues as that section rebuilds, rewires. If you have a stroke at a young enough age, the entire speech center moves to the other side of the brain. They don't know how, they don't know why. I was reading an article on it from Scientific American, and they were talking about how his brain is rewiring. And within a month or so, he may be completely fine. But what he's having trouble with is when someone asks a question, he has to see the question in order for it to make total sense. And then it takes him time in order to come up with his answer. Well, when you're in Congress, you do not make snap decisions. That just doesn't happen. You have committee meetings, you have time to study the issues, you have time to formulate your answers or your opinions and develop your vote. It doesn't happen overnight. Congress moves like molasses uphill in winter. And as far as being ableist, yes. If you say this person has a problem and shouldn't be allowed to serve, that's a problem. Calling for that sort of thing is like saying, okay, Stephen Hawking shouldn't have been allowed to be a scientist and be brilliant because he couldn't speak. He lost his ability to speak.
Yeah.
Really? He was still brilliant, just couldn't speak.
So are there any specific races that you've had your eye on?
I am totally baffled by North Carolina's Sherry Beasley being behind Ted Budd. I mean, he's a liar, a cheat, and made money off the backs of farmers and left the farmers holding the bag with no recourse when he and his family declared bankruptcy from their little business. But they're supporting him. I don't understand that. So I've been watching that one, and Sherry Beasley is just unbelievably well-versed and supported by quite a few different police chiefs and the police unions and so forth. And for a Democrat to be supported like that, it's very unusual. Of course, I've been watching the Georgia Senate race, and I'm like, how can he even be that close to Warnock? I mean, Warnock is morally and ethically head and shoulders above Herschel Walker, who never graduated from college, even though he said he did, and was not a police officer, even though he carries a 10 badge. I don't understand that one.
Now, if the GOP takes the House and possibly even the Senate, what will the future look like in this country for the next couple of years?
Okay. If you are over 65, you will not be having the Medicare that you have right now. You will not be having the Social Security that you would normally be having, because they've already made it clear what they want to do. Mitch McConnell was caught on a hot mic. If we take control of the Senate, we're going after Medicare, Social Security. We'll do away with the thing that the Democrats just passed with negotiating drug prices and putting caps on drug prices for seniors. And that should be enough to scare a whole lot of the older folks who vote. I'm sorry, I like my Medicare. I like my TRICARE for life. My husband put in the time. I like the fact that I can negotiate for drug prices. I went in the other day to get a new medication from Walgreens because I didn't want to go sit at the Navy hospital forever. And I pulled up GoodRx, and they've negotiated prices if you've got a GoodRx card, which is free. And I got the medication for a third of the price. Really? Their whole idea is to dismantle everything that the Democrats have built so far. They intend to continue to erode away on the civil rights that 50 years ago people fought and died for in Selma, Alabama. Women ended up in jail because they fought against the inability to get an abortion if they needed to in the case of rape and incest. And it's just, to me, when they said it on a hot mic, that should have been shot from the rafters too. But nope, we don't do that. So, what can I say? It's going to be an interesting time. I'm going to the deep woods and not surface until after the 8th.